down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And I thank everyone who has come here. I'm also going to have to give another shout out to the Mark K Show and crew, especially Hannah Guile, for taking my last video, my last episode, and they played a little bit of it on the air, or not on the radio air, but on the streaming air. So and of course, because of that, I get a bump, like always. I mean, it's just fantastic. I appreciate it. I appreciate all my subscribers, old and new. I appreciate everyone who comes here and is willing to listen to me rant and rave about all kinds of stuff. And first things first, though, I do want to say tonight I am drinking the Black Barrel, Jameson Black Barrel. I'm kind of a bit of a one or two trick pony, I guess. But it is also in my famous America shot glass. Unfortunately, you can't really see the liquid, but I promise you it is in there. I would not lie to you at all. At all. That wouldn't be prudent, because I have the smartest listening audience in the world. All right. So before I get really deep into the subject tonight, which of course, if you see by the by the title, Dems get an F in listening skills. I want to do a couple of things. First of all, I have already kind of given a shout out, and I do appreciate all of my listeners, everybody who's there. I got a nice little bump this afternoon, both on YouTube as well as Rumble. However, if you are on YouTube and you want to hang out with the party crowd, jump on over to Rumble, create an account. It's the free speech alternative to YouTube, but jump on over to Rumble, get a free account, get in on the chat, because I got a lot of people that come over to the chat in the Rumble space. So that's number one. It's a great place to be. A lot of conversations happen while I'm doing my monologues and everything else, and it's awesome. And it's the Rumble is the cool kids. Secondly, I caught this right before I came on the air. It was about an hour ahead of time. I caught it through Twitter, and it really, really, really throws right into the topic tonight. This from the Washington Times, just came in that the House Dems quietly push through a potential 9% increase in fiscal year 2023 spending. So really quickly listen to this. House Democrats on Wednesday approved quietly, and budget hawks said sneakily, a resolution setting a top level of federal discretionary spending for fiscal 2023 at $1.6 trillion, which would be an increase of 9% over current spending. And of course, this is at a time of 40-year high inflation. Now, the funny thing about this is it was attached to the gun legislation that apparently 10 Republicans went ahead and jumped on board to. This was some of the stuff that's been going on with the House. The reality of it is, once it goes over to the Senate, it likely will not pass as written in the Senate, although the Senate is also coming up with some of their own stuff on gun legislation. Realistically, I'm just going to tell you this right now. If any politician signs on to any kind of gun control measures, they are literally violating their oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, because, of course, the Second Amendment says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And if you have any questions about that, I did an episode on it, but I am more than willing to go through it again sometime just for the informational aspect of it. All right. Now, I do want to say thank you to Buddy Weiser, very faithful listener who provided me with the background that you see behind me. I wanted to bring that up. I've been transferring through there, and I have something for what I'm not going to necessarily call it the pet of the week, but I have something from one of my listeners in the pet segment here coming up. So stay tuned for that. But first, let me read a poem that was also submitted by Buddy. But let me read a poem. We had D-Day celebrations. We had Memorial Day and that kind of stuff. So I feel like it's appropriate for us to go ahead and read a short poem called A Hero's Welcome by Robert Longley. Once again, that is A Hero's Welcome by Robert Longley. Time to come home, dear brother. Your tour of duty through. You've given as much as anyone could be expected to do. Just a few steps further, the smoke will start to clear. Others here will guide you. You have no need of fear. You have not failed your brothers. You clearly gave it all. And through your selfless actions, others will hear the call. So take your place of honor among those who have gone before, and know you will be remembered for now and evermore. And once again, that is A Hero's Welcome by Robert Longley, Longley, Robert Longley. And thank you, Buddy, for submitting that for tonight. Okay. So what am I talking about when I'm talking about the Democrats getting a F in listening? Well, pretty much everything that the Democrats have been doing over the course of the last year and a half, 2 years of Biden's presidency have essentially been against what a lot of the American people have wanted. There have been several polls that have come out, all kinds of measures of what has been top on people's minds. And the thing about it is that these people are not listening. They just are not listening. And a really big indicator of that is coming up tomorrow. They are going to do their dog and pony show from the January 6th committee, which, by the way, is a seriously incomprehensible use of the committee process, the idea of the committee and the subpoenaing of people and so on and so forth. The Congress does not have the authority to go after someone in a legal sense in terms of like trying to prosecute a crime. Okay. Whenever a committee from Congress is convened, it usually has something to do with a law that was written or maybe interpreted incorrectly, or, possibly a misappropriation of funding that Congress has put out. But it is not a legal, meaning a trying to prosecute a criminal offense. That is left to the executive branch. The executive branch, and of course being the president being the highest legal entity, law enforcement entity in the land, that is up to the judicial branch up to the, wow, I'm just all over the place. That is up to the executive branch and the Department of Justice, is to track down criminals when they have broken the laws. This whole dog and pony show that Congress is putting on is literally that. It is a dog and pony show. It is a hope, albeit a very slim hope, that the American people are going to take a look at this thing, that they're actually even going to watch it, and have it changed their minds for some strange reason about the midterm elections coming up in November. Now, they have hired, reportedly, an ABC executive to produce this thing. And they have, they've already leaked out that this is going to be a televised show. They're going to use particular snippets of congressional depositions and those kinds of things to try and make it fabulous or try and make this huge thing out of something that honestly was just a bunch of idiots who decided to, break some windows and steal some stuff, and the Capitol Police backing off and allowing them to come in. This is nowhere near what an insurrection would be. And to be honest with you, I can't even imagine why somebody would even think this is an insurrection, because it's not even close. They weren't even armed. Not a single person was found with a single weapon in terms of things like firearms, which of course that would be something that would, be a part of an actual insurrection. And in fact, it was put down in like 2 hours. Everybody got back to business, including Congress. The only person who was hurt was Ashley Babbitt, which, by the way, we've just found out that the DOJ is not going to go after the Capitol Police officer or the Capitol Police lieutenant who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt. They have determined, according to some reports, that there is no wrongdoing in what he did, although it's kind of interesting that he did not actually file a report on this. But anyway, we're gonna have to, we'll take a look at that and that kind of stuff. But and it is sad that Ashley Babbitt did die. I will admit that she was probably in the wrong place at the wrong time. And tensions were high, and sometimes things can happen when situations like this occur. So I can at least on the surface understand what's going on. But and yes, I see it, Day. Hold on. The thing about it is that this entire thing is essentially a witch hunt. It is an attempt to try and smear Republicans and go after the Republicans who may or may not have even actually had anything to do with this, including Donald Trump. They're trying to keep Trump from running in 2024 for sure, but they're also going after other Republicans. They already tried going after MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and that illegally, and that fell flat. All right, let me get to this Rumble rant before I get... Here we go. Hannah is mad at me. Happy for Josh and Hannah. Will miss Josh. And my last segment was awesome. Thank you very much. And yes, Patriots, definitely Patriot love is there. That is awesome. Awesome. Okay. Now. Okay. So as far as the Democrats actually listening to the American people, there was a poll that came out. It was an ABC News Ipsos collaboration, and it's a poll. I've got the link in the show notes, show description. And I'm only going to read this to you because it's basically a table format. There's nothing really flashy about this. But these are the questions that were asked. The first one, just for, in the interest of transparency, because I certainly don't want to be accused of like holding anything back here. The first question was, do you approve or disapprove of the way that Joe Biden is handling the coronavirus? And this week he is sitting at 56% approve, 43% disapprove. And by the way, this poll is roughly 540 adults. They do have a listed margin of error of around 5 percentage points, just under 5 percentage points at about 95% confidence. And it's been done every month. This one happens to be June 3 and 4. So I want to make sure, and this is for adults ages 18 up, and it was done online. Okay. All right. So the next question is also, do you approve or disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling immigration? And according to the poll, 37 approve and 61 disapprove, with 2 skipped. So 2 decided not to answer that question. On the economic recovery, it was 37 approve, 61 disapprove on economic recovery, the way Joe Biden is handling that. On crime, 38 approve, 61 disapprove of handling crime. And then we have the situation with Russia and Ukraine. Now, this one's a little bit closer to like a 50-50 split. We've got a 46-52 split, 46 approve, 52 disapprove. And then climate change. This one's kind of surprising, but 43% approve and 55% disapprove of his handling climate change. Then we have inflation, which this is probably his worst, or pretty close to his worst numbers. We have 28 approving and 71 disapproving of the way Joe Biden is handling inflation. We have, which of course, obviously just what I read to you in the opening. For gas prices, we're at 27 and 72. So just right about the same, but just slightly lower in terms of or higher in the disapproval column. Gun violence is 35 approve, 64 disapprove. Taxes, we have 37 approve, 61 disapprove. In abortion, we have 41 approve and 58 disapprove. So this is basically I would call it a indicator of where the American people really feel that Joe Biden and his administration are actually doing these things. Where are they at? But of course, Joe Biden wants to throw all of that out. And he just wants to basically say that January 6th is the key. He's got a handle on inflation. Gas prices, actually, today there was a report, I think Karine Jean-Pierre pulled out of her hat and said that basically that Joe Biden can't do anything about gas prices, which is kind of ironic, because if he'd had opened up drilling and opened up, American energy, we could be in a lot better position today than what we were and what we have been. If he'd have left everything alone and not done anything when he first came into office, we would still be energy independent, because, of course, as Trump was leaving, we were energy independent from, having to go and talk to OPEC and Venezuela. And now we're dealing with, having to sanction Russia, which isn't doing any good for trying to keep Putin in check, because I saw an article, and I don't have it here, but I saw an article where they are actually raking in all kinds of rubles because of China and India picking up Russian oil now. OPEC has also said, as far as oil is concerned, OPEC has also said that they are not going to increase production, which, again, we're just basically on the train track, and we're heading toward the end of the tracks, and the wreck is coming. I'm just telling you that right now. The whole concept of inflation, stagflation, and potentially even a recession is right around the corner. And even Janet Yellen, the secretary of, I'm not sure what her official title is, but she's the one that was supposed to be looking at, looking at the financial situation that we're in. And even she has said that she made a mistake, that she hasn't seen, she couldn't anticipate that, or she didn't anticipate it properly. But now it's kind of like an, we're kind of in it and there's nothing we can do, which I think is a bunch of crap. And we also know from history that we were in a very similar situation with Jimmy Carter. And although Reagan's policies took a little bit to make an effect, I do think that if they actually looked at history and opened up Reagan's playbook, they could probably turn some of this around if they would, decide to actually do something when it comes to the economy. Now, I'm not an economist. I really am not. But even I understand the fact that when you have more of something, that actually cheapens the value of that something. And when that something is the American dollar and the paper dollar, the first thing that you want to do is you want to stop spending. You want to stop doing all of these things to spend. And this is obviously based off of the Washington Times article. This is obviously something that the Democrats have absolutely no clue what they are doing here with that. Okay, so the next dumb thing that they've got going on is, of course, Biden has been, and the education system has been pushing this whole ideology in schools. I mean, first it was CRT, and, CRT is not being taught in schools. We come to find out that, yes, actually CRT is being taught in schools. And then we have this whole thing about, schools are not dealing, they're not necessarily teaching this, but they're encouraging this whole gender identity. And if you look on TikTok, you've got all kinds of teachers talking about how, they've come out in front of their students and so on and so forth. I've even said on this show before that, as far as I'm growing up, I never knew anything about my teachers. I didn't know if they were married. I didn't know, what their political affiliations were. In fact, when I would meet them, in public places outside of school, it was kind of awkward because, of course, I thought of them as being, just at the school and the instructor at the school. That's essentially what I would know them as. Well, one of the things that they've been pushing, and of course, with the release of Matt Walsh's movie, What is a Woman? That has actually kind of taken things by storm. I mean, it's sort of just like the 2000 Mules, and definitely sort of like his best-selling children's book about the boy who wanted to be a walrus. He kind of popped onto the scene with this movie. And of course, congrats to the Daily Wire for promoting it as well as they have. If you haven't had a chance to see it, I know you do need to get a subscription because, of course, they're trying to fight with, creation costs and those kinds of things. But this was an interesting poll that came out. This came out from Save, and it was done by u.gov, I believe is what this is. And let me go ahead, and this one I can pop up because I want you to see it. So they asked some questions with regards to expanding the definition of sex to include things like gender identity. And they got some apparently surprising results back. 63% of Americans oppose expanding the definition of sex to include gender identity. Now, this is nearly 2/3 oppose the Department of Education's plan to expand its longstanding definition of sex to include gender identity. The national survey conducted for Save by YouGov, sorry, I said u.gov, it's actually YouGov, also shows that strong majorities of Americans reject other proposed changes to Title IX, which is the federal law that bans sex discrimination in schools. So let's take a little bit closer look at what they found. Okay, so the first one is the definition of sex, obviously, and 63% want to keep the traditional biological definition. 37% of respondents came back and said, yeah, no, we don't, we want to expand it to include these words that you can read on the screen here, talking about gender identity, sexual orientation, and so forth. Now, the next question is transgender participation in women's sports. 29% felt that we should allow it. 71% of respondents said no, they don't need to allow it. Now, the interesting thing about this, of course, is that, the conversation around transgenders in sports has always been, well, a transgender is equal. And I'm sorry, but biologically, if you've gone through puberty, biologically, you gain a physical, it's been proven by science, but you gain a physical advantage by having gone through puberty as a boy and then hitting and trying to change your gender. And this is demonstrated by the best example of this is the whole Leah Thomas situation. Leah Thomas went from ranking 400th and something in the nation for boys or for men's swimming. And then all of a sudden, he transitions over to being a girl, still being a biological male, by the way. And he ends up being first in all of the women's events, clearly winning, even though he reportedly has been on the transitioning hormones for roughly about a year. And this is proven out by all kinds of science. This just makes sense to most people. So now, the next question is parental consent prior to school counseling about gender dysphoria, which is the psychological actual diagnosis for these people who are transgender. 61% responded saying that they would require parental consent prior to counseling about this. 39% say they don't want to require parental consent. Then you have parental opt-out for children's participation in sex education classes. And believe me, this is a big topic. It's been in the news. If you haven't read about it, you really should kind of take a look. There's a lot of stuff that they are throwing into these sex education classes that's not even a part of the whole, biological background of this. There's a whole bunch of additional stuff that they've been throwing in. Allowing parental opt-outs is 69%, and not allowing parental opt-outs is 31%. The presumption of innocence or guilt from college disciplinary hearings. Now, this one, I don't know where they randomly picked this one up, but whatever. Presumption of innocence, which is a American value, is you are innocent until proven guilty, unless, of course, you're in the military, in which case you're guilty until proven innocent. But the presumption of innocence is 87%, whereas the presumption of guilt in these kinds of situations is 13%. Now, they also wanted to redefine sexual harassment. And so one of the things that they did is they want to retain the current definition to protect free speech, which the current definition basically lines out as conduct that is, quote, so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive, and that so undermines and detracts from the victim's educational experience that the victim's students are effectively denied equal access to an institution's resources and opportunities. So 57% voted to retain that existing conduct or the definition. The expanding it was a little closer on this one, expanding the current definition to discourage persons from saying things that may be unwelcome or upsetting was 43. Now, they kind of break this down a little bit further. Overall, males and females gave similar responses with the exception of question 6, which kind of would be a little obvious, I guess. 66 or 2/3 of the males preferred to retain the current definition of sexual harassment, while 53% of the females indicated a preference to expand the definition. So, I mean, honestly, I don't know how the Dems get the idea that we want transgenders in women's sports, that we as a country want to have, changes within the whole idea of biological sex. They keep pushing these things, and they keep talking about these kinds of things, and they keep trying to put them on the forefront when it's clear that the American people are a lot more interested in things like the economy and inflation and gas prices and all of these things. It's just amazing to me that the Dems are like they're tone deaf. They are so focused on trying to get their ideology passed that they are completely tone deaf on the subjects and the issues that the American people really want help on and really want to focus on. And to be completely honest, none of that is actually in the Constitution. So, the Constitution basically outlays the framework and the structure that essentially states that anything that is in this Constitution is what the federal government is supposed to do. And for anyone who has, the Constitution of the United States, like this version of the Saddleback version, which, I sell, and a part of the proceeds come to help the show. But anyone who goes and grabs one of these things and reads through it can actually see there is nothing in there on some of the topics that these Dems are after, like abortion or, sexual identity or, trans women in sports. None of that actually shows up here in the Constitution. And so this again is a huge overreach of the federal government's, supposed to have been the federal government's power. This is a complete overreach for it. So the next thing that the Dems seem to not want to listen to, and I don't know if you've seen a couple of the stories that have come out. George Soros backed some sort of a fund, and he went around and was, buying up, some radio stations, some Hispanic radio stations, because they are under the belief, the Dems are under the belief that part of the reason why the Hispanic voters are leaving the Democrat Party and coming over to the Republicans is because of the fact that, just like they felt in national talk radio when they created NPR, was that they feel as though that they are underrepresented on these radio stations, and they are saying that conservatives are putting out misinformation. Now, if you watch Dan Bongino's episode today, he basically tells you, rightfully so, that whenever a Democrat says misinformation, just flip it around and read it as conservative message. Okay. So they want to censor the conservatives, and they've been going after conservatives quite often. We've seen it in cancel culture. We've seen it across many platforms. And so, one of the things that they are doing in this George Soros backed fund apparently has gone through and picked up a bunch of these radio stations that cater to the Hispanic culture. Well, one of the things dealing with the Hispanic culture has been this terminology of Latinx. And Ben Shapiro, not today's, but yesterday's or a couple days ago, he showed a video that our wonderful friend Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, put out there, where she was talking about how, we really need to focus on using the terminology Latinx. Because, it's much more inclusive. It's much more inclusive of all the genders and everything else that can happen within the human race, at least according to her. Just don't get me wrong. I'm not agreeing with her. I'm just saying that. And so I found it kind of interesting, this next article that came from Politco. And Politco, of course, is a completely left-leaning media outlet. But take a look at this headline. Let me bring it up. Democrats fall flat with the Latinx language. And basically this piece pulls from a poll that was taken in Miami, by the way, which is it has a large Cuban, Puerto Rican population. And they went there and they were like, hey, they asked a bunch of questions. But one of the things that was interesting is the fact that, and I'm going to bring it down here. So the poll found out that only 2%. Now this was, I've got the actual poll. I think I linked it in the show notes. But they polled about 800 people for this, 800 people in Miami. And only 2% of that 800 people actually refer to themselves as Latinx, while 68% of them call themselves Hispanic, and 21% favored either Latino or Latina to describe their ethnic background. And this is according to the survey from Ben Dixon and Amandi International, which is a top Democratic firm specializing in Latino outreach. Now, one thing for those of you that don't know or may not speak Spanish, Spanish is actually a gendered language. There are words that are designed to describe either male or female. For an example, if you have a cat, the word for cat is gato. If that's a male cat, so it would be el gato. If you have a female cat, and I don't know if this is correct or not, but you would say, you would use the A on the end of it. And I think you'd preface it with the la, but I'm not 100% certain, because sometimes, even though they have an A at the end of the word, sometimes it's el, like el gata or la gata, as an example. But the point is that the words are they are gender specific. It is a gendered language. And so because of this, when you do things like go ahead and pull out the gender specific either O or A, depending upon which way you go, you end up with a problem, because a lot of Hispanics view that as you're actually excluding the a certain segment of the population. Now, typically you don't hear the term Latina unless you're referring to a specific woman. But what you might, more often than not, you'll hear more of the idea of the O as the gender, quote, gender neutral form of the word. So you would, the language tends to lean more toward a masculine formation of the words when you are not specifically referring to gender in particular. Now that sounds kind of weird, but that's all that I've been told about the Spanish language. And so, the whole idea, and this is where the problematic comes in for Democrats, is that 40% said that Latinx bothers or offends them to some degree. And 30% said that they would actually be less likely to support a politician or an organization that uses the term. And the reason is, again, what I just explained. It's because of the fact that it tends to cut out a particular segment of the population in terms of, whether it's male or female. Now, the other thing you need to understand that I've learned about the Hispanic culture is they have a tradition of things like machismo. So to be a manly man, or what our American left calls toxic masculine, is something to aspire to in their culture. So when you go and you make these changes and you want these people to utilize these terms that are potentially offending for them, of course they're going to make a big change. Of course they're not going to be all that thrilled. The other thing too that you need to understand is that a lot of the Hispanic culture is also very family oriented. And so the whole concept that the left has been pushing about the destruction of the family unit and all of these things they tend to have a negative viewpoint of those types of things. So with the far left taking over the Democrat Party, it's no wonder that these people are actually jumping away from the Democrats and going to the more traditional Republican thought process in terms of conservative values. The Hispanic culture does have a lot more in line with conservatives than they do with the Democrat far left that we have to deal with. Now, there's one other thing that I wanted to show you here. Hold on. Let me go ahead and shut that article down. But one of the things, and I went out and I grabbed the slide deck that the poll created to get all of those numbers that I cited you in the Politco article. But one of the slides in the deck actually kind of caught my eye, and I just want to throw this up here because I want you to actually see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the traditional thought process of male, female, the machismo kind of idea, that the traditional values sort of setup. So one of the questions that they put in the poll had to deal with what is your gender? And here is what came up. Now, if you look at this and you think, oh, well, there's only male and female that responded. Okay. But I actually think this is more indicative of the culture in terms of their respective ideas toward gender. Now, if you've seen the movie, What is a Woman? Matt Walsh actually goes and interviews an African tribe. So I don't want to do too much in terms of a spoiler alert on that. It's a very interesting exchange. But the one thing that comes out of that, and you may have seen it in some of the promos, is the fact that the African tribe doesn't believe in the idea that a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man. They are very, in terms of the African tribe, they understand that women have a place and men have a place. This is very similar in other spaces around the globe. In Western cultures, we are the only ones that seem to have this fascinating idea with the fact of gender fluidity. And so I caught this and I just thought, oh, this is perfect because this just plays, on the surface, you think, oh, well, maybe they just didn't ask the right people. But I'm telling you, based off of the culture itself and what I've experienced, it is very, very much a male, female, nothing else kind of culture. In fact, if you are anything else, you tend to be on the ostracized list when it comes to their culture for this. So, this is an amazing little thing that, again, we're dealing with Western culture here. We're dealing with essentially a group of individuals who, quite honestly, have not been listening in terms of the Democrats. They have not been listening to the general American public. They have not been listening to what the public wants. And as we all know, when the public decides, especially in an election year, that they want to change, they will go ahead and make that change. I mean, it happens with, it happened with Obama when he got into office at first. The party held both houses, and then 2 years later, the Congress flipped over. This is more than likely going to happen this year. That being said, though, please, please, please do not assume that it's going to happen. Get out and vote. Get out and vote. We have got to keep the pressure on. We have got to crush these people in the elections. We really, really have to. Okay. So this is...
Please check your mailbox. A new message has arrived.
Yes, a new message has arrived, and this message comes from our wonderful listener, Mama 5 Kitties. Now, under the pet of the week kind of concept, I was thinking, maybe one pet, two pets. No, we have to show all five because Mama Five Kitties is literally the mama of five kitties. So here we go without further ado. This is Mama's Little Brood. Up first, we have Charlotte. And I'm sorry, Mama, I put them in alphabetical order because, honestly, I didn't really know their ages necessarily. So we're just going to go in order, in alphabetical order. So the first one up is Charlotte, obviously, a very, very nice little orange kitty. And looks like like most kitties, they like to lay and look upside down. Next up is Carly. And this is a tortoise shell kitty. It's also her youngest. It is her youngest kitty. Then we have Leah, who apparently was the recipient of some costume. Yeah, and unfortunately, Mama, I don't think Leah looks all that happy in this photo to be in the cowboy hat. Kind of a little bit of a nasty look. I've seen that look on my kitties. I have. And all we are is dust in the wind is what the words say at the bottom. Next, we have Molly, and Molly is a gray, looks like a gray kind of tabby. And she looks like she's just kind of hanging out. Oh, yeah, she was not. Okay. So Mama popped in and she says she was not happy. It was a Halloween costume. Yeah. And that's apparently Carly is her husband's baby. Is Carly. This is Molly. And Molly is kind of hanging out and enjoying some rest and relaxation. Of course, we all know cats do that. And the last one here is Riley, an all black cat. Riley can actually go both ways. So Mama, if you could help me out, I don't know, is that male or female for Riley? Is this the male? Because I think most of the others were female. Is this a male cat by any chance? We'll give it a second for the video to catch up here. And of course we go back to Charlotte. Riley's a boy, but acts like a girl. Oh, okay. So he's transgender. I'm sorry. That was bad. That was horrible. All right. So do me a favor. If you want to get in on the action for either the pet of the week or even sending me like backgrounds, cool backgrounds like this, do that at fans, FANS, at whiskeymusings.online. Whiskey Musings is all one word, all lowercase, and yes, it is plural. Whiskey Musings, all one word, all lowercase, .online. If you're going to do the background, what fits best is a background that is a 1920 by 1080 dimensions. So that's 1920 wide by 1080 high. That's usually a lot of your high definition. I can take things larger than that. I can take some that are smaller, but usually if it's smaller and I try to blow it up, it can look really wonky. So the best way to do this is, if you're going to do that, is 1920 by 1080 or bigger. And I thank you for contributing. I thank you for sending that. I do have another one for my next episode that is out there. I'm going to keep that private for the moment. Now, all right. So I cannot tell you how crucial our interaction with China and Taiwan is. I did an episode on this. You can take a look back in my episode list. I don't remember exactly what number it is. Give me just a second here. Gotta wet my whistle. Oh, and before I do, we have Mama says that her kitties say thank you. Well, I thank you for submitting them. That is great. I love it. I love it. And hey, I see a person in the chat that seems to be a new individual. So I want to welcome Beach Girl 00. Thank you for coming by. And she also said, loved your video of Hannah today on the Mark K Show. Yeah, that was my last episode. You can go back and watch the entire thing on Rumble. You can also watch them on YouTube. I mean, I'm going to stay on YouTube until YouTube kicks me off. But Rumble is definitely my preferred place. So welcome, Beach Girl. Thank you for joining. I do appreciate that. Okay. So back to Taiwan. The episode that I was talking about Taiwan about is just all of our electronic devices, everything that we have that is electronic, that contains a silicon chip in it. And this covers everything from auto manufacturing and, all of the computers and sensors on board of our autos. We have our appliances. We have, anything that we carry around in our pockets, phones, computers, tablets, even going down to things, which this is really scary, but even going down to things like, our defense systems. Everybody has a chip in it. And that chip is, ironically, developed usually by or in Taiwan. Taiwan comprises of roughly 90% of the world's silicon manufacturing in the world. So, this whole idea of Taiwan and China, everything, even if you think like even the manufacturers that come out of Japan or come out of China themselves, all of those electronics have a very high likelihood that there is something from Taiwan in every single one of those electronics. So if Taiwan were to fall to China, because right now they kind of act as their own entity, if Taiwan were to get invaded by China and fall to China, that would be a huge impact. And I know I'm in the IT world, so I can tell you that we are being impacted by chip shortages that are occurring mostly because of the standard supply chain shortages that we have across the globe that we've been dealing with when it comes to things like electronics and stuff. For an example, I heard a report of some stores that were just now or just within the last couple of months had just received their Christmas shipments. Okay. So beyond that, though, the number of electronics that have a Taiwan component in them is astronomical. And if Taiwan were to get invaded or to get into a lengthy war with China, we, especially America, but the entire world would lose a huge, it would be impacting everything. If you think things are bad for electronics now, you could just imagine what would happen if Taiwan were to stop manufacturing. And so this next article that I'm going to show you just popped up. It was yesterday's. It was in yesterday's American Military News, and this kind of gives me a bit of pause. And honestly, it kind of makes a little hitch in my giddy up because of the fact that up until now we've been kind of talking about the stance on Taiwan from the Biden administration has typically been, yeah, we're going to do the same thing that we're doing with Ukraine. We're going to supply them with arms and training and everything else in order to help defend against China. But we've always been talking about our the admin's relationship with Taiwan. We've always talked about how we're friends with Taiwan. We're friendly with them. And we have a understanding that they are a separate entity from China. Even though China consistently has said, no, Taiwan is part of a one China, just like they had talked about Hong Kong being part of China and being part of one China for many, many, many years after the Brits let it go back in the mid 90s. The whole idea from China's perspective is that Taiwan is actually Chinese territory. And so this kind of makes me a little nervous. And not only that, but we also have things like, for an example, Iran. I don't know if you caught these articles, but Iran had an IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, Overwatch. They had some cameras over in Iran, and some of the cameras went offline here recently. So that's a little concerning as well, because Iran could be very close to doing a nuclear, having a nuclear device. They've been enriching uranium, and part of the reason why Trump left the Iran deal was because of Iran's continuous breaking of their obligations to stick with the Iran deal. But that being said, again, you're looking at Biden and his essential weakness. And I'm going to be honest with you, Afghanistan, his pullout from Afghanistan was probably, I mean, regardless of the fact of what it did to us, losing 13 soldiers and giving back the Taliban, now we have a black hole in terms of any kind of intelligence for that region of the world, where if we'd have kept at least Bagram Air Force Base, we probably could have been in a much better position. But his pullout of that is just, it's a lot, the ripples coming off of that, like dropping a stone in a pond, the ripples coming off of that is being felt everywhere. I mean, there have been news reports that foreign countries are not taking Biden's call. North Korea is not taking Biden's call. They have done ICBM tests in and around Japan. You have China threatening Taiwan. You have Iran potentially getting a nuclear device. You have Russia invading Ukraine. So all of these things lining up, I mean, our political position throughout the world is very, very tenuous at best. And so when I see something like this, I am even more nervous about our situation, where the Biden administration quietly reinstates U.S. opposition. Not that we're friendly with it, but that our opposition to Taiwanese independence. But the fact that he did it quietly is the problem. Not that he did it overtly and announced it, but the fact that he did it quietly. And considering his gaffe that the White House had to back off on in terms of him basically saying that we would defend Taiwan with troops if necessary, and then the White House had to go back that off and say, no, our actual official position is that we'll supply them like we do Ukraine. But the fact that the administration slid this in is honestly a little scary. And then, of course, understanding how many, and this is from the U.S. Department of State directly, with regards to the U.S.-Taiwan relationship. I've got this linked. You can take a look. But the key is, I lost it. Hold on. Give me just a second. I got to read real quick to find it here. Here we go. So right here, this paragraph right here. The United States' approach to Taiwan has remained consistent across decades and administrations. The United States has a long-standing one China policy, which is guided by the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 U.S.-China joint communiques, and the 6 assurances. We oppose any unilateral changes to the status quo from either side. We do not support Taiwan independence, and we expect cross-strait differences to be resolved by peaceful means. Now, I want to point this out, that they even say right here that Taiwan has become an important U.S. partner in trade, investment, health, semiconductor, and other critical supply chains, investment screening, science and technology, education, and advancing democratic values. Now, this is scary. This is scary from the standpoint of even just understanding world and foreign relations. To put out a statement like that is, and again, keep in mind, it's not that that the U.S. has to state that they want Taiwan to be independent. They don't necessarily have to state it, but because they have now stated explicitly that they agree with China, that they agree with the one China policy, that they are essentially saying that Taiwan can't have its independence. You're looking at a situation like what we saw a couple years ago with Hong Kong and being folded back into China itself. And let me see, there was something. Okay. So, sorry, I was looking at the chat, seeing if there was something there that I wanted to highlight, but anyway, so this is something that, again, I'm going to tell you right now, pay attention to this. There is a lot to pay attention to right now, but pay attention to this, pay attention to the whole Iran thing. The Russia-Ukraine deal, honestly, we don't have, in terms of Ukraine itself, we don't have they don't have strategic value for us. They honestly don't have a strategic purpose for us. But the reality of it is that a place like Taiwan does have strategic significance for us. And even just the idea of Iran getting a nuclear weapon, that has a strategic significance for us, mainly just because of the fact that Iran has made absolutely no bones at all about wanting to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. So sitting here and looking at the geopolitical scenarios that we're dealing with, having a weak leader in office is literally the catalyst that a lot of this is causing. And I don't know. I honestly don't know where we're going with this. I hope that things don't fall out and change that much. But realistically, this is a problem. This is a big problem. It's a huge issue for America and the world for us to not have a strong, effective, and especially a military leader. And his ineptitude leaving Afghanistan, the ripples from that, I think, are going to be extremely impactful throughout the geopolitical theater, more so than just, Russia going after Ukraine. Okay, so that pretty much sums it up for tonight. Thank you very much for coming. That's my last Whiskey Musings thought for the evening. Thank you very much for joining. If this is your first experience with the Whiskey Musings broadcast, also known as Patriot Outpost Whiskey Mike Bravo, do me a favor, hit subscribe. I have been putting all of my social media right here, you can see, and follow me on the social media stuff. I do tend to kind of hang out on Twitter a little bit more than some of the other platforms, only because I like needling the stupid liberals over there. I've already been banned from Twitter once. But anyway, do me a favor, follow me on social media, come to Rumble, subscribe. I've picked up some subscribers. I went from 174 to about 178 today. I also picked up a few people on YouTube. I do appreciate that. And we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.